As we ended Part 1 with the USS Texas, we begin Part 2 with the USS Alabama. You can say I'm a big fan of battleships. I worked on the USS New Jersey BB-62 in the early 1980s, and later visited her in Philadelphia as a museum ship, as well as the USS Wisconsin BB-64 in Norfolk, and the USS Missouri BB-63 in Pearl Harbor, the USS Iowa BB-61 in Los Angeles, the USS Texas BB-35 in Houston, and the USS South Dakota BB-57 Memorial in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. There are only 2 more to visit to complete my bucket list of battleships. If battleships and submarines are not your bag, you might want to skip ahead to the 6-minute 54-second mark. The USS Alabama BB-60 is the 4th and final member of the South Dakota class of fast battleships built for the Navy in the 1930s. After entering service, Alabama was briefly deployed to strengthen the British home fleet, tasked with protecting the convoys to the Soviet Union. In 1943, she was transferred to the Pacific for operations against Japan. The first of these was the Gilbert and Marshall Island campaign. While operating in the Pacific, she served primarily as an escort for the Fast Carrier Task Force to protect aircraft carriers from surface and air attacks. She also frequently bombarded Japanese positions in support of amphibious assaults. She took part in the Mariana and Palau Islands campaign. After a refit in early 1945, she returned to the fleet for operations during the Battle of Okinawa and the series of attacks on Japanese mainland in July and August. Alabama assisted in Operation Magic Carpet after the war, carrying some 700 men home from their former war zone. She was decommissioned in 1947 and assigned to the Pacific Reserve Fleet, where she remained until 1962 when she was stricken from the Naval Vessel Registry. Alabama is 680 feet long and had a beam of 108 feet 2 inches and a draft of 35 feet 1 inches. Unlike the USS Texas, the USS Alabama was open and receiving guests. It was great to tour this ship, and the smells brought back memories from the 80s. The ship was powered by 4 General Electric steam turbines, each driving 1 propeller shaft using steam provided by 8 oil-fired Babcock and Wilcox boilers. Her top speed was 27.5 knots, and she had a cruising range of 15,000 nautical miles. The ship was armed with a main battery of 9 16-inch 45 caliber Mark VI guns and 3 triple-gun turrets on the centerline, 2 of which were placed in a super firing pair forward, with the 3rd mounted aft. The secondary battery consisted of 25-inch 38 caliber dual-purpose guns mounted in twin turrets clustered amidships, 5 turrets on either side. As designed, the ship was equipped with an anti-aircraft battery of 12 1.1-inch guns and 12 50 caliber M2 Browning machine guns. The main armored belt was 12.2 inches thick, while the main armored deck was up to 6 inches thick. The main battery gun turrets had 18 inches thick faces. The conning tower had 16-inch thick sides. She's pretty thick, don't you think? The USS Drum SS-228 is a Gato-class submarine. She is the first Navy ship named after the drum, a type of fish. Drum is located next to the USS Alabama at the Battleship Memorial Park. Drum was laid down on September 11, 1940 at Portsmouth Naval Shipyard in Maine. She was launched in May of 1941 and commissioned later that year in November. Drum was the 12th of the Gato class, but was the first completed and the first to enter combat in World War II. She is the oldest of her class still in existence. Drum arrived at Pearl Harbor from the East Coast on April 1, 1942, and after a voyage to Midway Atoll, departed Pearl Harbor April 14th on her first war patrol. Cruising off the coast of Japan, she sank a Japanese seaplane tender on May 2nd, and afterwards endured a 16-hour depth charge attack consisting of 31 depth charges. The Drum featured 10 21-inch torpedo tubes, 6 facing forward and 4 facing aft. She was initially armed with one 3-inch deck gun, 2 50 caliber machine guns, and 2 30 calibers. She had a forward deck gun that was a 5-inch 25 caliber, and she could travel for about 75 days. Her test depth was 300 feet. She carried 8 officers and 75 enlisted men. I can't imagine 78 souls traveling for up to 75 days in these cramped quarters. The bunks were located sporadically throughout the vessel. They were definitely an afterthought for their locations. Drum received a total of 12 battle stars for her World War II service. She is credited with sinking 15 ships, a total of 80,580 tons of enemy shipping, 8th highest of all U.S. submarines in total Japanese tonnage sunk. This is just a replica of the Hunley. Well, enough of the history lessons. Let's get on out of Alabama and get to Florida. After leaving Mobile, it was just a short hop over to the Panhandle of Florida, where I went to Pensacola Beach. It was late in the afternoon, and it was overcast, cloudy, and cold, but it was something to see. Who knew it was a whole peninsula out there, just surrounded by beautiful white sand beaches. Oh, and this spaceship that landed on a house. If you plan to drive in Florida, head over to Publix and pick up a SunPass Pro/Easy Pass, about $15. You cannot travel in Florida without one. Almost every bridge and interstate charges fees. You can't pay by cash due to the beer virus, so they conveniently send you a bill and add on all kinds of administration charges. And it can be used in other eastern states. My next stop was Clearwater, Florida, where there is a marina with a few boats I wanted to look at. That didn't pan out as the vessels look nothing like the photos in Yacht World. So a quick stop in downtown Clearwater to enjoy the sights and have a slice of pizza. Boy, this town really does love their dolphins. This is a cute little beachside community, but a little bit culty, I think, for most. It's pretty much empty. Of course, I was there during the week in the afternoon, but nevertheless, super fun little city. Just outside of Clearwater in a town called Safety Harbor, you'll find this little hidden gem in a residential neighborhood, just like the Beer Can House in Texas. Whimsyland is and has been a work in progress for over 20 years. It's a local landmark for those who live in the Tampa-St. Pete area and who like to seek out unusual places. Using countless bottles, tile mosaics, and more than anything bowling balls, the private Florida residence has taken 2 decades to cover its grounds with a non-stop explosion of color. My next stop was off to Publix for the world-famous fried chicken. KFC, take note. This rest stop had an unusual maintenance team. They did a fine job. And these birds, they just stared at me. It was crazy. After a few hours of driving, I arrived down in the Keys. Marathon Island, here I come. Marathon Island in the Florida Keys is known in the cruising world as the Mecca for pre-owned blue water boats. However, after visiting 2 of the 3 most popular marinas, absolutely nothing for sale, except for derelict or overpriced vessels. Most everyone I spoke with said to check back in a year or so when all the yahoos figure out they can't sail or just not into it. The Turtle Hospital was a nice distraction. Too bad the tours weren't open due to the pandemic. I spent 2 full days wandering around the marinas. Due to the pandemic, many people bought boats and RVs to isolate, and just like in California, the only inventory left is complete overhauls or yachts outside our budget. The footage of empty marinas and disappointment is not worthy of posting on this video, so I head out of the Keys and up to Fort Myers to try my luck again. Marathon wasn't a total loss. It was my first hotel stay since leaving California. I got 2 nights and free laundry. What's a trip to Florida without visiting the Everglades? Everglades National Park is a 1.5 million acre wetlands preserve on the southern tip of Florida. Often compared to a grassy, slow-moving river, the Everglades is made up of coastal mangroves, sawgrass marshes, and pine flatwoods that are home to hundreds of animal species. Among the Everglades' abundant wildlife are the endangered leatherback turtle, Florida panther, West Indian manatee, and American crocodiles. Beautiful in its own right. Hey, is that those birds from the rest stop? Are they following me? Anyway, all that is said and good. You need a mosquito net covering your entire body to walk around, and those suckers are big. I hung out in multiple spots from the safety of my truck to catch a glimpse. Just like the sailboat inventory, they must be social distancing, as all I saw were a few birds. Well, Fort Myers was another sailboat bust, so I headed over to Punta Gorda to visit a very dear friend who I hadn't seen in, a couple years. Very excited. After some small talk, we headed out to the world-famous Waffle House. I just love that place. Oh, and this is my friend, Barb. After catching up at breakfast, Barb treated me to a manicure and a footacure and a few other things for my birthday. Thank you so much. We then headed over to Fisherman's Village to look at the yacht sales, and as you can imagine, Nothing. I just don't understand it. So we took a harbor cruise where I caught this fish. So it was a really great day. I tried everything to find a roadside stand selling fresh orange juice. That's the best I could do. I guess chalk that up to the pandemic as well. After my visit with Barb, I headed east to St. Augustine, Florida, and visited the Castillo de San Marcos National Monument. The Castillo de San Marcos, Spanish for St. Mark's Castle, is the oldest masonry fort in the continental United States. The construction of the core of the current fortress was completed in 1695, though it would undergo alterations and renovations over the century. When Britain gained control of Florida in 1763, pursuant to the Treaty of Paris, St. Augustine became the capital of British East Florida, and the fort was renamed Fort St. Mark. Until the Peace of Paris, 1783, when Florida was transferred back to Spain and the fort's original name was restored. What's a trip to an old fort without visiting a pirate and treasure museum? This place was a total tourist trap, but the brochure that I read before I headed there made it sound very interesting to see pirate artifacts and treasures, which in fact they did have, but in very limited quantity. Nevertheless, it was a fun visit. Don't be fooled by what you see. A lot of things were tagged as replicas. In fact, the gift shop was twice the size as the museum, so that should probably tell you something. Don't let that deter you from visiting if you're ever in St. Augustine. Just check the local papers and find a discount coupon before you enter. It was very fascinating, with a lot of information. Located behind the Pirate and Treasure Museum is St. George Street. It's made of cobblestone and is car-free. It is the main street of town, and it looks like the setting of every pirate movie. What's a fort, pirate treasure museum without a cemetery? Located in the heart of downtown St. Augustine, it is considered the oldest cemetery in Florida and the final resting place of the city's dignitaries. Check out the walls, you can see seashells. Thank you again for coming along on this journey. Stay tuned for part 3 of my East Coast trip. Love you, Mom.